continuing our series on the 48. Today we are here with
Dr. Scott E Brosius, filmmaker extraordinaire.
Well, Scott, what got you into filmmaking?
So I've always wanted to make films ever since I was a little kid. But you know, when I was a kid, because I'm older than everyone who's watching this video, cameras really weren't around. I mean, you know, people didn't have cell phones. People didn't have even cameras on their computers. So, you know, by the time I went to college, cameras started coming down in price, and you know, I jumped up in one and I just started making a feature, because that's what every filmmaker should do first.
Start with the feature.
Start with the feature. I mean, what could go wrong? How could you regret it? And yeah, I had a lot of regrets, and I wish I would have just done shorts. Yeah.
What do you prefer? Features, shorts, documentaries? Because I know you've done them all. You've even done music videos.
You know, I like shorts because it's great to just knock out something in a weekend or a day, and then you're done. You kind of move on to the next story. Features are fine because it depends on how you write them. You could write it almost episodally and basically just do a lot of shorts, combine them together, and now you have a feature. One short that I did that way, called Vile, we did in January, and it's kind of expanding to maybe a 40 to 50 minute short film, which is, dare I say, a short feature.
Sure. Who would you say your influences are, filmmaking wise, like director? Or, you know?
I guess it's kind of a double-edged question. As a director, obviously, you know, I want to be the next Stanley Kubrick or Steven Spielberg. I don't like that directorial style. I don't like torturing my cast and crew. No one fact-check me on that, because I do occasionally torture my cast and crew. You know, but you know, I find that another filmmaker that I really try to model myself after is Alfred Hitchcock, Ridley Scott, and the reason why I model myself after them, not for their directing style, but because all their movies, they like to use more like photography lenses, where things are longer and more beautiful and less distorted.
So as far as the 48 goes, how many 48s have you done? Approximately.
I'm kind of at the point where I've lost count now. I think I was at like 16 when I started this year, but now that I've done these 48s, I think I'm at like 20 or maybe 21. I'm not really positive yet. So, because with the Stuck at Home 48 challenge, I've done every one of them, and
there's 4 of those so far.
Yeah, I've done a lot. And then I'm gonna try to do the next one that I think is on the 22nd to the 23rd. Although I'm shooting another part of my feature, the Vile series, that same day. What I might just do those?
Yeah,
why not?
You could do it.
Why not? How could I regret it?
Do you have a specific approach that you take every 48, or is it different every time? Like, do you always write the same? Do you always have like a format? Like, you know that you're going to film this day from this time to this time, or you're gonna, you know, you want to spend this much time for editing? What's your format?
So the day of, I try to be very rigid. I try to do, you know, like an 8 to 5 shoot, where, you know, we all arrive on set at 8 o'clock, and then, you know, we do kind of a script review. We just kind of, you know, shoot the bowl, and then we, you know, we just go over the script and talk, ask questions. I like to get all my questions and problems knocked out before we actually start shooting, because when you start shooting, it just slows down everything. Also, going into the shoot with a script that is a blueprint of the day, and not changing it as you go, you know you're not going to miss anything that is imperative to the story, including maybe the line of dialogue, or maybe make sure that, you know, oh, we don't need that prop. Well, if the prop is required, then you do need that prop. So things like that are important to have a really, really tight script, just as a blueprint for the day, because when you get exhausted, you just want to read a piece of paper. Okay, what do we have left? It's nice just looking at a piece of paper and not trying to think about what you need to do. The day before, for writing, because I'm also the writer, I'm character driven, so almost all my actors, I usually will say, well, this person kind of looks like this, so he'll be a brute, and then maybe this person will be the smart person. So I'll have kind of these characters in mind for different people, and then when I get the genre and I get all the elements, I try to think about how those characters would interact in that genre with those elements.
Do you storyboard, or how do you keep track of your shots?
I don't storyboard. The only time I would ever really storyboard is if I'm not in the shot, because I'm a funny one. I'm producer, writer, director, and DP, so I know all the shots in my head, and I'm also the editor. And from editing, I kind of understand what I need to flow from point A to point B, and what pieces I need to transition to the next. Now that kind of gets twisted around when I'm an actor, because now I have to hand over the camera to someone else, and I need them to understand what the A point is and the B point is for the shot and sequence, just so they know how the camera's going to move and how the camera's going to stop me.
And that's a longer process then, because then you have to sit back and review all the footage.
Exactly.
To make sure they got it.
Exactly. Versus if I'm behind the camera, even if I'm not the operator, at least I've seen it once, and I could say, yeah, that looked good, that looked bad. It's always good to review it anyway, but I'll find myself, if I'm acting in it, I might review it twice or more, just to really nuance, and then I'll ask other people, what do you think? So now when I'm in the shot, it becomes more complicated because I have to trust other people in multiple different ways.
What are some like do's and don'ts? What are like the biggest mistakes you've made doing a 48 that you would advise, like, hey, I learned my lesson from this, don't do this?
So I feel the two biggest mistakes that I've made were, one, we had a script which was maybe like 2 paragraphs, and we were like, yeah, we know the story, we got this. So the day of, we're shooting, and like we just completely go off the paragraph because you don't have anything.
So there was no dialogue. It was just like,
it was
here's
just
a scenario.
Exactly, it was just a scenario. Another time is I did a short film and I wrote in, lesbians bicker, and that's kind of a vague statement, So they're talking about, they just talked about random stuff for like 4 minutes, and I'm like, I kind of wanted them to bicker for maybe 30 seconds. So that was a big lesson I learned. If you're going to have lesbians bicker, write what they're bickering about. And if they change a word or 2 or 3 words, at least you have the amount of time the same. Versus if you tell them to bicker, they can start talking about their aunt and maybe like their real cousin who is going through a sex change operation. And, and it's like, wow, we're delving deep here, guys. And then I guess one other thing, don't do too many locations. If you have like 10 locations and it's going to be amazing, 1, the film is probably going to be too big. 2, you guys are going to be driving all over Hell's Half Acre. Some people will get to the next location, some people won't. Some people will say, you know what, I'm going to go to Taco Bell. I'm hitting, I'm in 5th meal. And then all of a sudden you start losing people, and now you're waiting for people. Now you're on a 12-hour shoot.
You're losing daylight.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a nice day today.
Oh, this is awesome.
Decided to sit outside today. What about dudes? Like, what works perfectly for you? Have you found that chemistry?
The most important thing that I do is you need to have a cast and crew that is reliable, that you trust, and 8 o'clock comes around Saturday, they're going to show up. And they're not only going to show up, but they're going to have read the script, they're going to know the material, they're going to show up, and they're going to know what you're shooting. So, how do you get that guarantee? How do you build that? And how I build it is I build a family. Like, I don't shoot with strangers, I shoot with people that are family members or people that I'm bringing them in to be family. And you do that by, having meetups. You do that, by just grabbing a beer, grabbing a cup of coffee with them. Or, now in this day and age, doing Zoom meetings and say, hey, let's just meet up and talk. If they show up, then they're probably going to show up to your shoot. If they're 10 minutes late or half an hour late, that's probably the person that's going to be late. If they just no call, no show, or show up 2 hours into it, it's up to you if you want to trust that person, or if you want to keep that friendship. You say, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't the best shoot for you. I think we're overcrewed. Maybe next time. And then there is never next time.
What awards have you won?
I have won a runner-up best film. I have won best lead actor. I've won best score. I've won nominations for almost every category. Best original song. I mean, you know, you're going to do the 48 16 times. I mean, you're going to get a lot of noms eventually, even if you don't try. And I'm trying.
Which 48 are you the most proud of that you've done?
I would have to say Verboten Chocolat. That was an inside joke movie to me, where we did this like horribly dark and serious kind of gore movie. It's as close as a slasher as I think I've ever gotten.
And everybody was so angry.
Everyone was so angry. Everyone was always yelling. And like, first of all, it was maybe the anger was the most comical thing about it to me. Ron was my makeup artist. I like to torture him with doing a lot with very little time, and he did a lot with very little time. We shot up all the way up until sunset, and it was awful. So, and how the story unfolds is, you know, it's a super dark, super angry, super intense movie, and then it ends with like a silly kind of twist.
That tied in. Actually, the whole thing tied in with several.
It tied into so many movies, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah. So
and I do
inside
that.
jokes, yeah.
And you know, maybe that's another thing how I write. Like, if I'm going to do a comedy or something silly, I always try to tie it into something I've done previously, because then on set it makes us laugh, and I like to laugh.
Which 48 are you the most embarrassed of? You don't even want anybody to know about.
The first one,
Yeah.
It was one called Romantic, and that was one we had like 2 paragraphs, and we just kind of winged it, and it just was a mess. I think the biggest problem that we had with it was, you know, we had a lot of ambitious people. We had people that didn't know how to really use cameras, and then they saw attractive women across the street and thought it would be better to get footage of that than the footage of the movie. So then when I'm editing, I have all these pictures of close-ups of attractive women walking, and I'm like, you weren't shooting the scene? He's like, I thought you'd want this better. I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted better. So I yelled at people on set. I was angry. I regretted that. And then, like, to wrap it all up, we were on stage, and, you know, Brian Bowers, the old 48 producer, said, you know, who used DSLRs, who used camcorders? Well, 2 people used camcorders. I used one and another person. So they asked the person, you know, what did you use? And he's like, yeah, I did an XL1000 with this lens and this lens. You know, he had maybe like a $3,000 or $4,000 setup. Then they asked me, and I said, what camcorder were you using? And I was like, I was using a Sanyo. And he's like, what kind? I'm like, you know what, it really doesn't matter. It really, we can just move on. Just move on.
You were done with that one.
I was like, you know what?
Gonna buy some better equipment next time.
Yeah, I was like, and after that, I bought a DSLR, and the birth of my first son, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a nice camera, and I'm just gonna try to document his life. And I just delved into photography, and I feel that's made me a better like filmmaker in general.
And that goes hand in hand with, you don't always have to have the best equipment to make a 48.
No, and even the DSLR that I ended up getting, and I made a couple films with it, it was maybe a $500 DSLR. I mean, to me, that's not outrageously expensive. And, you know, I just spent the time. You know, I learned an old saying in the military, and that's repetition is the key to clarity. You do something enough times, you're going to get good at it, even if you don't want to be good at it. You might not be perfect, but you'll at least understand it and be kind of good at it.
Well, if you could change one thing about the 48, you could make a new rule or just like something you're not happy with in the past, what would that one thing be?
So I'm probably going to be the weirdest person you interview. I like the 48. I like it how it is. I think it's like with the stay-at-home 48. One thing I've really enjoyed about it is they've tried to do fun things like do a prequel of a fantasy or an adventure movie, or they did you know, they did another one where the trailer. Yeah. I was like, you know, everyone has to do a movie trailer. I loved it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was unique. You know, and you know, I like it when they kind of mix up the challenge where all the people that have prepared 1,000 different genres and have prepared, you know, all these things, and then now they're stuck with everyone has to do a trailer. It makes the playing field even, and I like that.
if you had advice for a first-time team, what would you give them for doing the 48? They don't know anything about it. They're like, this looks pretty cool. I want to get into this. What would you tell them? Like,
I would say, simple. Keep it simple. You have a friend's house that's kind of interesting looking. Do everything inside the friend's house. Shut the windows. Turn off the AC. Turn off the heater while you're shooting.
Unplug the fridge.
Yeah, unplug the fridge. Remember to plug it back in.
Yeah.
Funny stories about that. But keep it simple and just do one location. And then don't have 10 actors. Like, why would you have 10 people in your living room at any given time? Like, there's no reason for that. Have maybe 2 actors, maybe 3. And, just keep it concise, keep it tight, and let the actors just be themselves. Let them act. Trust them.
Did you want to plug any of your current or future projects?
Yeah. So one of the big films that I'm working on this year, I had a couple that I was going to do, but the one that I'm just focusing on is Vile. It started off as a short film that I did for the Fun Mill competition and film festival. That has expanded from a 7-minute film now to maybe a 45-minute film, with several chapters that are just kind of all intertwined, and I've been shooting it in such a way that I could fairly easily combine them to a coherent single short feature.
Cool. When can we expect to see that? What's your goal?
Oh yeah, it's a goal.
I mean, because we're locked down, obviously.
Yeah, so I really only have 3 scenes left to do. Mm-hmm. I have one location that is the last chapter that I'm hoping is a day shoot. I have a flashback that I want to do, which is maybe a 3-hour shoot, and then I have an outdoor scene that I'm going to be shooting on like the 24th. Ron will be here, and several other local filmmakers from the community will be helping out.
And then if we wanted to find your films, where could we find them on social media?
You can find them on, you go to Facebook and you can search White Midnight Films, or you can go to YouTube and search White Midnight Films, or YouTube/SEBROSIUS.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming out.
Cool.